changing things up from the raw GoPro feed I usually upload after a race weekend, I figured I'd take the time over Christmas holidays to look back on my 2021 dirt oval racing season, as this ended up being my first ever provincial championship. I spent 2021 racing with the Northern Alberta Mini Stock Series, which is just a 4-cylinder regional series that competes primarily at Castrol Raceway in Edmonton, who used to have a date on the World of Outlaws schedule a few years back, as well as Fire and Flood Speedway out in Rimbey, Alberta. So what is my weapon of choice for the season? It is a 2005 Pontiac Sunfire built and caged by Justin Horton. The reason a lot of guys are making the jump to GM products for 4-banger racing is because a lot of GM compact cars came with a 2.2-liter Ecotec engine, which puts out 140 horsepower stock, and there's a huge aftermarket part scene for that engine model. So guys have started to move away from the Fox Body Mustangs and Honda products that typically dominate 4-cylinder oval racing. It's mandated we run street legal tires, so I use BF Goodrich radial TAs with a size of 225 60 R14. The right front I run no lower than 19.5 psi, and I scrub like a bitch to generate heat during the pace laps. Otherwise, there's a 50-50 chance it'll come off the rim. The left front I run at 8 or 9 psi. Yes, you really do run it that low. And then the right rear to make the car turn, because this is a front-wheel drive oval racing car, I run anywhere from 35 to 40 psi. I haven't done much of anything to the engine. I just run comp cams instead of the stock GM cams, and the ECU has been tuned by a group called TBG Tuned based out of Mason City, Iowa. There's really not a lot to these cars. My towing rig is a 2001 Chevy Silverado 2500 with the 4.8-liter engine package. I don't really need anything fancy. Castrol's 30 minutes from my front door, and Rimbey on a good day with no traffic is only about an hour and a half drive. So I can make do with something like this, and yes, ripping across the prairies on a Friday or Saturday afternoon going out to the track is incredibly comfy. For my GoPro footage, I just use a GoPro Hero 4 Session that's mounted to the side of my helmet with a 3M adhesive. You can get them in packs of 5 or 10. And it just sits next to my visor. Usually I give it a quick wipe under yellow, and it's actually surprising how little dirt gets into the cockpit and gets on the camera. You'd think this would be a problem, it's really not. Okay, is that everything? I think that's everything. Let's go on to testing. So as you can probably imagine, COVID and the restrictions constantly changing week by week and just all the bullshit surrounding that pushed back the start of our racing season by about a month. But since most tracks had already committed to starting in May because they believed restrictions would be lifted a bit earlier than they actually were, a lot of the scheduled race dates were just swapped out with open practice sessions, so we tested everywhere. I think I ran like 3 or 4 different open practice sessions. And like some of them, there was just no point other than messing around and having fun. Like we went to Edmonton International Raceway in Wetaskiwin, where I used to race for a few seasons, put slicks on the car and just took aim at the 4-cylinder track record because it was funny. And this unironically ended up serving its purpose anyway, because while I was only about a tenth or two off the all-time 4-cylinder track record, I think I ran a 14.9 and the record was a 14.7, I noticed my throttle response just fucking sucked. And the car just had no mid-range torque, but I figured it might be something silly like the tire size. So I just drove around it and dealt with it. We also did pack racing testing at Castrol, so I battled with a guy from Quebec named Nicholas Cote, and we just brawled with each other in preseason testing the way you would do like iRacing style pit parties where everyone just groups up and leaves the pits at the same time and just takes turns passing each other. I'm actually really glad we did this and got comfortable driving around each other, because when it came time for the season opener, there ended up being a corner where Cote pushed really wide in turn 4 and almost sent both of us into the wall. But we had been familiar enough racing alongside each other after practice that like we were able to avoid that and not kill each other. So the season finally got started on June 19th, 2021 in Rimbey, Alberta, and because COVID restrictions were week by week, not a lot of people were ready for things to just get lifted all of a sudden for the summer, so we took the green flag with 4 cars. And it was basically a giant R&D session where I messed around with running the cushion in a front-wheel drive car, which I've never really tried before because not a lot of cushion develops at Castrol. It's really weird trying to maintain a slide in a front-wheel drive car because instead of counter-steering like you do in a rear-wheel drive car and then feeding it throttle, you have to continue to turn the wheel left to maintain the slide, which feels wrong and backwards, but that's just how it works. So I spent most of the race fucking around with that. And of course, me in my infinite wisdom got really carried away with this and almost clobbered the wall in June.
You literally slapped your gas door off of the wall.
So the following week, June 25th, we did a 2-night stand at Castrol Raceway right at home, right in my backyard. Much better car count. We had, I think, 10 or 12 cars take the green flag for Castrol Raceway's season opening oval race. My main competition was going to be a kid in a blue Fox Body Mustang named Chase Tom. He is the son of an accomplished late model driver from up here, so obviously his dad's taught him a lot about driving, and it's a really well-built car, so it really could have been anybody's race, and for a majority of the race it actually was, but for whatever reason I just couldn't get around him. I could pull right up to his back bumper and give him a shot. I couldn't do anything after that. It's like the car had no mid-range torque, but again, I just said fuck it and tried to drive around it as best as I could, and watch Chase slowly walk away from me in what was a caution-free race. So I text my car builder after the race, and keep in mind, I do not work on cars, and I really don't know a whole lot about the mechanical side of things, so I'm just taking shots in the dark here, and I'm like, look, I think the timing's out, because I have no torque on the straightaway, but it's not making any crazy sounds or trying to blow up on me. I just have no torque and can't pass people. And my car builder's like, well, didn't you win the opening race of the season, and like, didn't you come second last night? And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, that's not the point. I think something's really fucked up. So we did a pretty simple compression test with just like a cheap rental kit from Canadian Tire, and yep, I was running on 3 cylinders. Now, what happens to cause this? Basically, if you install camshafts the quick and dirty way by just taking off the top of the engine, there's a large chance you're going to misalign the timing chain. In fact, my car builder did this exact same thing when he ran this car back in the 2020 season, and it's why he got so angry one race. He ended up punching out the dash display, and I found plastic shards all over the cockpit when I was cleaning out the car for next season. I understand his pain. Imagine driving a 140 horsepower car with a restrictor plate on it. That's what the sensation feels like, so I'd be pretty mad too. Now that that's dealt with, let's skip ahead to July 16th, 2021. We're back at Castro Raceway for another 2-night stint. It's usually how they have their event set up. And we've got a nice little battle between myself, Cole Tom, Chase's younger brother, in the yellow 55 Acura, and Ryan Ellis, our class organizer, in the blue and orange Ford Focus. Why am I showing something that happened in Heat 2? Well, first of all, there's this sexy wreck avoidance right here, but this is the only thing that happened out in front of my windshield all night. I knew I was down on power, but I didn't realize until that race just how down on power I actually was for the first couple months of the season, and I just obliterated the field. I don't have a second camera that points backwards, so I genuinely don't have any interesting footage to show here of the July 16th race. This was still a really cool moment regardless, because my family's won a bunch of stuff on the drag racing side at Castro Raceway, basically dating back to the track's inception in the early 90s, so for me to get an oval track win, we kind of joined a very elusive group. But yes, I was the black sheep who went oval racing, so my bad. 24 hours later, we are back for another round at Castro Raceway, July 17th, 2021. I believe this is a Saturday night race. There were some wildfires in BC that weekend, and the smoke drifted eastward across Alberta, which it usually does, which made for really shitty conditions. It sucked to be outside, it sucked to breathe, the lighting was really crazy, but this race was a lot of fun. I was placed at the back of the grid for both heats as well as the feature race. This is a great battle I had with a guy named Chet McCallum. He's running a Fox Body Mustang chassis and platform with a 1985 Ford Thunderbird body. I believe he's a Microsoft certified technician who does a bit of Bitcoin mining in his spare time, and this is one of about 3 or 4 times we'd have just an amazing side-by-side battle throughout the season. One of the really fun parts about mini stock racing at this level is the diversity and just the types of different builds you see on the track. I've got a front-wheel drive GM product, he's got a rear-wheel drive Ford product from the 80s, and we're both running side by side, more or less the same lap times. Skipping ahead later in the evening for the main event, I'm going to roll off P6 of either 8 or 9 cars, and there are a lot of clean, fast guys in front of me, and that's what's made racing this season a lot of fun. Very little drama, very few wrecks too, which is quite uncommon for these cars. Racing at Castro reminds me a lot of Homestead Miami Speedway and a lot of NASCAR games, where the middle to the high line is where you want to be. But coming out of turn 4 on lap 1 here, I really like the decision Josh Schroeder in the 88 car made, where he just chucked it as low as he could, and I decided that was a very intelligent move, and I was rewarded for that gamble, because in doing so, it cleared up a lane for me on the high side, which I almost immediately threw away by overdriving entry, and almost losing the back end of the car going into turn 3. Don't do what I do, kids, it's wrong. Brian Campbell is your leader in the number 19 Toyota Corolla, and once again I get greedy and try and be Superman around the outside and almost botch a second corner, but I just have so much power, and Brian didn't have the right rear end ratio in his car, so I was able to get around him for the lead on, I think, what is this, lap 2, and once again I just checked out. This race was probably a lot closer than I thought it was, because on the backstretch after taking the checkered, Chase kind of came up and gave a friendly wave. And I saw in event photos posted on Facebook later that night that he was really only a car length or 2 behind me for most of the race. We're not allowed mirrors in our class, just because that's typically how it is with dirt racing, so I had no idea this was what was happening behind me. So, long story short, we fixed whatever was wrong with the engine, won all 6 races that weekend, both main events as well as all 4 heat races. Couldn't have had a statistically better outing. Less than a week later, July 24th, 2021, we're back in action out in Rimbey. COVID restrictions at this time were for the most part done in our province. No one cared about it anymore. The guys who didn't have cars ready for the start of the season now have cars ready and are on the grid, such as the number 44 of Cody Bunting here in front of us, and it means that there are even more experienced people on the grid that you can do fun things with, such as send Cody flying into the corner to try and get around Nicholas on the outside here. This is what it looks like when you race mini stocks with good, talented, clean, but aggressive people, and we aren't done yet. Brian makes things 3 wide here on the backstretch, and I get the bright idea to cross over the entire pack of cars in front of me going into turn 3, and it almost works until Brian shuts the door, and now I'm just stuck in the middle of a pack. The main event was surprisingly tame compared to Heat 2, and my car handles a lot better once the track dries out later in the evening. These are street tires after all, they work a lot better in dry conditions, and I was able to notch my 4th win of the season just by running up high, running the cushion, and getting giant runs off the corner. We had a few weeks off and then picked things back up on August 7th, once again in Rimbey, under the lights for a true night race. Brian put a different rear end into his Toyota Corolla, and it made all the difference. He was actually able to hang with me most of the race, and then with 3 to go, got around me on the inside, but it wasn't without a really awesome fight, and there's a great photo of us taken where we are drag racing each other down the backstretch here, basically neck and neck. Could have been anyone's race. Again, this is why people race shitty little 4-bangers. 2 different cars from 2 different eras, 2 different manufacturers, 2 different build philosophies, running side by side with 3 to go. This shit's awesome. I forgot to turn down the sun flare and content manager, so I have to deal with this on the backstretch during the heat races, which is absolutely lovely. And as the sun goes behind the racetrack billboards, I discover the 56 car is dead loose in front of me, saves it, then gets loose again, comes down, hits me square in the door. No harm, no foul, no damage done to the car. That's what it's like to get hit at speed. Skipping ahead to the main event, this is the middle of August, so we are completely under the lights. Sun goes down a lot earlier than it did in June and July. And we once again are going to have to drag race Chet in his Ford Thunderbird for the lead. But as you can see him wiggle off turn 2 there, the track's really dry, and rear-wheel drive platform cars have a really tough time hooking up in these conditions. That's going to be all it takes to click off win number 5 on the season. And my mom was there for that, so that was really cool. August 14th, night 2 of the 2-day show, Castrol looked a lot different. Castrol is primarily a drag racing oriented facility. Once a year they host an event called Hot August Night. It's typically just a one-night show with a bunch of exhibition cars, and they decided to have this on the same day as our oval race, so the track was just rocking. I snapped these pics pulling into the competitors gate for the oval side, and it was nice to see a giant crowd for the first time in a couple of years. People are very obviously over COVID at this point, no one cares anymore. Your boy gets the dubious honor of starting near the back alongside the number 44 Honda Civic of Cody Bunting, and as we take the green flag, welcome to Top Split Mini Stocks. We're 4 wide at the flag stand, and I have to guess at which line is going to move the quickest going into turn 1. I guessed right by taking the high side, but the car does step out on me, and I lose a bit of momentum to Brian Campbell, but I do have the power advantage on him throughout the straightaway, so I figured, well, I'll just cross him over going into 3. And just like that, by the end of lap 1, we are up to P4. Really great opening lap for us here. There's a yellow about halfway through the race. We restart single file. I'm running P3 behind Corey Giles in the Ford Focus, as well as Chet in his Ford Thunderbird, and this ends up being a fantastic race between the 3 of us. You'll notice in the corner, the dry part of the racing line is really only about a car width to a car width and a half wide. Whatever happened this evening, the way the track slicked off was really weird. So it almost turned into iRacing, where if you didn't hold the metal line, you would just fall back or the car would plow. I was lucky enough to get a run on Chet on the exit of 4, which left just myself and Corey Giles to battle for the lead. And again, I really don't have the options I'm used to having at Castrol, because despite the track being really wide and really high banked, the racing groove is literally a car width wide. So I have to be really tactful about what I do here, and I just decided to fucking send it on the high side and drag the right rear on the cushion. And this is an incredible piece of driving by both of us. We're literally inches apart through the whole corner, and I'm just praying it holds, and it does. Drag race each other down the backstretch. I still haven't pulled on him, but going into 3, I'm able to take a really nice arc into the corner, carry a bunch of speed, take the lead, and that ended up being the pass for the win. So that ends up being my 6th win of the year, the second time I've swept the weekend at Castrol Raceway. And we've only got a handful of events left on the schedule. We've got another 2-day weekend at Castrol Raceway for a big mini stock invitational race, as well as a season finale out in Rimbey. I am completely unaware that I've accidentally created an arms race. On August 18th, I wake up to this lovely post on Facebook in our mini stock group. Can't let Austin Ogonoski sweep the season. So Brian's got a second car together, and I don't really blame him. The Toyota just isn't a good platform for the tracks we ran at. You're much better off running a front-wheel drive Ecotec car. Then people actually start asking how much he's put into that build. $15,000. My buddy's also building himself a second car. He's put in like 10. you can get a turnkey race-ready super late model for about the same price. Now, I could go out and spend 10 to 15 grand on engine upgrades to my Pontiac Sunfire, but I don't. And it's not because I'm currently unemployed. It's because things like this happen in mini stock racing. September 4th, 2021, this is turn 3, night 1, lap 1 of the mini stock nationals at Castro Raceway. Ken's car is mangled, Alex's car is mangled, Terry's car is mangled, Chet's car is mangled, Cal's car is fucking destroyed. I somehow managed to survive all this and bring the car home in second place. This, of course, is a 2-day event, so we're not actually done yet. For the Sunday show, they split us into heats of slower cars and quicker cars, and I end up winning the quick car heat against my car builder. Brian had an ignition problem and pulled off early. He ended up getting it fixed for the main, so it was just myself and Justin left to battle for the win. And it ended up being a really close race and just a lot of fun. Again, Castro's nice and wide. There's a bit of progressive banking, so the track really races a bit like Homestead Speedway. You have a lot of options in the corners, and we came across the line within half a car length of each other. And then we did it again under the lights later that evening in the final round of knockout qualifying. This is something you'll see at short tracks across the country as a bit of a gimmick event. They'll take the top 5 cars, either in points throughout the weekend or on the qualifying leaderboards, and basically have a match race against each other. And again, as you can see here, aside from this bobble I make through 3 and 4 because the track was a bit slick, we're really quite even on paper. There's really not much difference between our cars after just 2 flying laps. And when all was said and done, finished 3rd in Sunday night's main, came away 2nd in points for the weekend tournament style scoring we used, and made a few $100 for driving in circles for 20 minutes and staying out of trouble. Skip ahead to the final race of the season, Rimbey, Alberta, September 11th, 2021. All I had to do was start the race and to clinch the championship. Won the opening heat pretty handedly. Track was really slick and I seemed to be the only one who knew how to deal with it. And then for Heat 2, man, was this a battle. This is Terry Bedford in the number 17 Chevy Cavalier. It's a guy I used to race with on tarmac back at Edmonton International Raceway, and my god, has he gotten much better as a driver. This was a slugfest. Rimbey as a track is really deceiving to drive. You'd think because it's somewhat flat, you just want to park the car on the bottom and get a nice, smooth, straight drive off. But dirt racing in 4-cylinder stock cars really doesn't work that way. You have to really keep momentum and RPMs built up in the engine. So you'll see sometimes here I try and cut low. It doesn't work. I really have to park it as high as I possibly can, drive up to his bumper off the corner, and then cut low, which is what I attempt to do here. I basically just stare at his bumper, and then the moment the car hooks, I try and yank it to the left, and it works. That was probably one of the best battles all season, and I did give him a thumbs up because, like, holy shit, that was fun. Skipping ahead, 2 laps to go left in the season, green-white checkered after a late race caution flag. Terry's running in second. He is having the race of his life right now, and he's running down Justin Horton, my car builder. The last thing I want to do is junk the car in the final race of the season and have a bunch of work to do in the off-season. So I'm just watching this play out in front of me, shitting my pants, because, dear God, is Terry about to win this thing? White flag at the line, 20 seconds left in the 2021 season. I'm pretty much out of this by now, or am I? Take the high line. Justin blows the corner. Terry has to check up. Holy fuck, I am there. Oh my god, Terry's going to dive bomb him going into 3. Holy shit, we are all going to die. There's the dive bomb. Oh fuck, he missed. Let's go low. Let's get second. Holy shit, nope, he's coming back down. Okay, let's just back out of it. We'll take 3rd. That's fine. Cars in one piece. We are the 2021 champion.